Hello and welcome back. Joining us today is a friend of Bold and the founder of Valisure, David Light. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
So you're here to talk about a serious problem that people don't really talk about a lot, which is generic drug quality is not that good. So, of course, tell us the difference between generics and regular drugs, for that matter.
So about 90% of what people actually take in the pharmacy is generic medication. So these are medications that they were branded at some point, it was a new drug, and then anybody can manufacture it, which is almost always in India and China. It's often a different color, different shape, and those are generic medications. Now, they're definitely cheaper, but it also raises the question of quality.
Yeah, did you know about this, Julia, that there was a quality issue?
I did not notice that there is a key quality difference. Can you elaborate a little bit, like, for a patient, what can they expect for out of a generic drug that they couldn't get from a brand name drug?
Well, the active ingredient is the same. So that's really what they have to assure, is that in a generic drug product, that active ingredient, the drug, is the same. However, everything else can be different. You know, the color, the shape, that's because the formulation is different. We've certainly seen problems where the pill dissolves differently. We've heard from lots of people, especially with drugs that are narrow therapeutic index or that are kind of psychotropic drugs like antidepressants or thyroid medications, blood pressure medications. People sometimes feel those differences when their actual generic manufacturer changes. So when it looks different, sometimes you can feel different. And last thing, there's been a lot of reports of contaminations with these drugs. So carcinogens that can actually be in the drugs that are in our marketplaces and our pharmacies.
And that was a big news item, David. Your company, Valisure, which verifies the quality of generic drugs, figured out that Zantac, which is something millions of us, including me as a kid, took, was actually cancer-causing.
And that's really what we do at Valisure, is we check the chemical quality of medication before it goes out to patients and certify that and give that visible quality assurance to patients, doctors, and throughout the healthcare ecosystem now. And that's right. We found that Zantac and ranitidine, which is the generic version of Zantac, is fundamentally unstable and creates this probable human carcinogen called NDMA.
Well, David, I do want to ask you this. We all know there has always been variations in formulation. Sure. One manufacturer doesn't disclose, exactly what we're doing in the labs to another drug manufacturer, understandably so. So somebody else is going to try to figure it out. But wouldn't they have to go through the same type of FDA regulation to make sure, this works, we tested on...
So much faith in government, Julia.
Why? No, yeah. I have a lot of friends who work in the labs. I don't necessarily have faith in the FDA, but I trust the science, and I don't believe they will willfully put these patients at risk because they see them.
So the science is very different for a generic and a brand. The brand is going to go through a $1 billion process of bringing a new drug to market. The generic has to do one small clinical study one time and show that it's within 45% of the original brand in terms of the drug.
45%?
Right.
Oof.
So as long as it passes that one time and that science is then self-reported to the FDA, then it can pass. And there's been many cases of fraud and other issues. There's a great book called Bottle of Lies by Catherine Eben, a New York Times bestseller last year, that goes into some of these companies like Ranbaxy just lied about a lot of those reports. So there's a lot of ways where things can go wrong with generics.
So, David, bottom line is that my grandma, my spouse, my parents could be taking medication that is not what they signed up for, doses that are wrong, etc. Why is this allowed? And why are we dependent on importing these drugs from places like China and India?
That's one thing about COVID that's really shown all of us in many different ways, is how incredibly vulnerable our supply chain is, how incredibly reliant we are on China. 60% of the active ingredients, the drugs that are in your medications, are made in China. Just in China. And 80% of all of our medications are either from India or China.
Why would we ever allow this? We don't allow our food industry to be co-opted by other people. You know, we subsidize agriculture heavily in this country. Why would we allow life-saving drugs to be dependent on countries that, quite frankly, aren't our friend?
We want cheap drugs. Right? Everybody keeps pushing drug prices. And in the generics world, which is 90% of the drugs that people are taking, honestly, I think it's gotten concerningly low. You know, when something gets so incredibly cheap, you might be paying $20 for a medication from your pharmacy. The actual cost of those pills might have been $1 or less. You have your PBMs and everything else in the middle towards getting you to that $20. But the point is, there is a lot of concern, and the biggest point is that nobody's really checking. It's up to the drug companies that are in India and China to self-report to the FDA that everything is fine.
So if you had a piece of advice, we'll end on this, for consumers. I'm at Walgreens or CVS or my local pharmacy. Do you recommend going with the brand name drug instead of a generic?
That's very difficult for a lot of people. Obviously, the brand can be very expensive or sometimes not even available. So we do a lot of quality reports. You could certainly pay attention to what's going on at Valisure, valisure.com. We also have our own online pharmacy. That's how we launched this whole concept, is to bring a certified drug direct to a patient online through mail order. And now we're working more and more with wholesalers. We just announced a partnership with Premier RX, national wholesaler. We announced a partnership with an over-the-counter drug company, Cabinet, so that we can start to certify products when it gets to you in any pharmacy that you go to. And I'd say, you know, just be vigilant on the quality of your medications. It could be an issue with the medication, not just everything else.
Oh, well,
All right,
thank you
David,
so much.
Thank you for being here and telling us about it.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for watching Bolt TV. We'll see you back here soon.